views expressed on this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio. Get fired up for Spirit Fire Radio with your hosts, Dorothy, Riddle, and Steve Kramer. Get ready to shine the light on universal spiritual principles and uncover ways that ageless wisdom can guide you in cultivating consciousness in these modern times. Bring purpose to your life through practical spirituality and add to your awareness with Spirit Fire Radio. Now, here are your hosts, Dorothy, Riddle, and Steve Kramer.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Spirit Fire Radio. It is a delight to be with you. I am joined with my co-host, Dr. Dorothy Riddle. Hello, Dorothy.
Hi, Steve. Great to be with you. Great to be with everyone today.
Indeed, lovely to hear your voice, and I look forward to our conversation. So, Spirit Fire Radio, we're exploring universal spiritual principles that can guide you toward purposeful living. So, Dorothy, I don't know about you, but it has been quite the week. And we've been talking about right action this whole month. And we are 3 weeks into it. And I must say, the news, I just don't know how we can avoid it. Today's episode is going to be our moral compass. And it just seems like in the world around us, we have seen more examples of wrong action. So it couldn't be more apropos. You know, this week alone just has been an interesting week. So we're going to spend this week and next week and the following week, actually, it's a 5-week month, talking about right action and ways that we can add to the goodness that is needed in this world. How can we contribute in a positive way through right action? And today, more specifically, our moral compass. That's our internal guide that will lead us in this direction of right action and ethical behavior. So, Dorothy, just right off the bat, what are you thinking? Are we watching American democracy sort of crumble right in front of us?
Well, I think what we're watching, Steve, is a spotlight shown on exactly what our topic is for today, which is, you know, how do you decide what is right? What's your basis? What are the values that you use? And part of that has to be the effect on others. If I can just jump right in, Steve. And you know, we have these assertions by President Trump that he has the absolute right to act in certain ways, such as disclosing highly sensitive information, intelligence information, to the Russians. And if you just take that on face value, perhaps as the president, he does have that right. But the piece that he leaves out of that is what is the impact on the partner nation who supplied the information under the assumption, under an agreement, not just an assumption, an agreement that it would not be shared without asking permission. So we're not actors that just can act alone. We have to also think about the impact. And of course, this goes back to the principles that we keep returning to, which is we are all interconnected. We are all part of this cosmic energy field. None of us are independent actors in the sense of being able to choose to act in a particular way absent any reflection on what its impact will be on others, or what the consequences will be for others, or what our contract is with others. So how's that for just jumping right into a political situation?
I know, that was so well said. It was beautifully said, and it's just unavoidable. We spent the month before talking about right speech. And once again, we see the leader, supposed leader of the United States, saying one thing when it will serve him, and then doing another time and time again. And we ask, where are the checks and balances? We sort of see them erode. And so much of, I'm sure, what we'll talk about today, what we've talked about so far, is intent. What is your intent? And it always seems to come back in this situation to claiming the power, claiming the power for oneself. And when we live in a democracy, there are checks and balances in place, beyond even what just, it's Dorothy, it seems every day we've got something new, which is what is a little frightening. But beyond that.
But Steve, if I could just interject for a moment, you talk about checks and balances, and certainly on an institutional level, the institutions of a democracy work if all of those checks and balances work. That is, you've got the executive branch, you've got the legislative branch, you've got the judiciary. If they are independent and acting as checks on each other, all of that works. But I'd like to bring it to another level, which is, because we're talking about right action for ourselves, and what are our internal checks and balances? What keeps me from just doing what feels good to me, or what makes me feel like, the most important person in the room, or showing off, whatever. What are those checks and balances? And that, to me, is where we get to the concept of the moral compass, that internalized set of values and objectives that we use to refer and filter, really, our immediate impulse to say, is this really in line with my values?
Well, and that's where, just not to go back to politics again, but just to say, that's what we're all wondering is where is the moral compass of those that are here to balance? Where is Congress, and where are where is law? Where is the law? Where is that which society has there's a line that seems to be crossed where society would step in and have the power to step in. And so exactly, how do we look inside? How do we find this moral compass? How do we know what is right for us and feel that here's the line has been crossed? So that's what we're going to talk about, right, on the whole show.
That's exactly what we're going to talk about. Yeah, and so if we dig down into that, we have people saying put country before party. That is an expression of a value, in the hopes that that's a shared value. And I think part of the questions are, is that a shared value right now? But let's look at where we could get our values from, Steve. And there are a couple of places that immediately come to my mind. One is, which is supposedly the set of values that that nations have agreed to, is that Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which says all people have inherent dignity, all people are entitled to universal respect, all people are equal in terms of their rights. So if we, that's one possibility of a filter that we can use, of a moral compass, that, we test what we are thinking of doing, how we're wanting to act against those values, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And then another place.
I'll go on.
Well, and then in the ageless wisdom teachings, which we refer back to from time to time, there's another set which is not in contradiction, but is a little bit more specific for our everyday life. And that is 3 characteristics. Is our action harmless? Is our action supporting others to serve as seems best, to serve the common good in the way that seems best to them, rather than what we think is the best. And then, does it elicit joy? Is it coming from that expansive place of joy, rather than criticism?
Yeah.
So that's another way of putting together a moral compass.
And all of those take a bit of self-knowledge. We've got to be able to see ourselves, and we've got to be able to question. We've got to be able to look at ourselves and observe, to ask, are my actions aligned with those principles? So, it's wonderful that those are out there, but it does take a bit of searching. Sometimes we have got to get ourselves in a bit of a bind. We find ourselves in a bit of a dilemma. I think that's why sometimes they're called moral dilemmas, because on some level they are subjective, but as you say with the Bill of Rights, that came about, of course, after the Second World War, where we saw humanity just acting in ways that some would consider just downright evil. And it seemed that the human family came together and created this Bill of Rights so that we all could reflect on the world we'd like to see. Those are wonderful. I love joy. I think that's an interesting addition to that list. I'm wondering if you could say a bit more about that.
Well, I think the joy to me is an interesting concept. It's similar to, but not the same as happiness. Happiness is a more personal and situational feeling, whereas joy is this, to me, it's this sense of really experiencing in the moment who we are, and who we are is the entire universe. I mean, we are part of that incredible, whatever you want to call it, the one life, the cosmic energy field that quantum physics has verified for us is in fact who we are. We are energetic beings. And through our thoughts, we create, in our focus, we create the reality that we share. But we are this incredible potential, and that to me is part of what joy is about.
Right. For me, there's a reverence there. Everything you said brings out a reverence for me, a reverence for life itself. And when you feel deep in the core of your being a reverence for life and all that it displays and all that it holds, it's hard not to follow your moral compass. You inherently will not act in a way that's harmful, in a way that will cause separation, because to even be in separation from another human being is to take away that joy and that reverence for all that is in the moment and all that you are experiencing in the moment. So that's where it gets tricky, right? We have to be able to see that. We've got to be able to experience it and then notice when we might be adrift, or when a situation is adrift. Can we still participate in it and maintain our moral compass? Can we act in a way that might help right that situation?
I think one of the things that's really important to keep in mind is that while on some level, if you watch an infant, you can see this expression of joy. While there may be a part of us that knows right and wrong, we actually learn it through. I think of it as through rehearsal. We learn it by examining situations that we're in or others are in to see the consequences. We talk with each other about what if. We can rehearse internally with ourselves. If I was in this situation, what are my options? What would the consequences be? Does that fit with with my values? And strengthening one's moral compass, to me, is about a commitment to having those kinds of conversations, that kind of reflection.
Right. I'm hearing a co-creation happening, and that is how we create a better world, right? We do it
Mm-hmm.
together through being connected and acting upon that with, highest intention and highest motivation. So let's talk about motivation when we come back. We're going to go to a break and talk about the motivation behind a moral compass. We'll be back.
Treat the body and expand the soul on June 1st with Lynn Brown. In this all-inclusive retreat, you'll treat your body with breakout sessions in the various elements of nature, enjoy fireside chats while harnessing the healing energy of fire, allow more light with more ease, and activate that connection between the body and spirit. Call 206-931-7356 or visit lynnmbrown.com.
Do you feel that there's a bigger, better life for you? Is there anything holding you back from living the life you were meant to live? If you'd like to find your life's true purpose and calling, join the world's foremost authority on primal spirituality, David Carshare, in Becoming a Sun Radio, emotional and spiritual intelligence for a happy, fulfilling life. Tune in once a month to Becoming a Sun Radio with David Carshare on The Dr. Pat Show and Transformation Talk Radio. For more information, visit davidcarshare.com today.
Chris Stanis is a spiritual leader and healer and teaches a course on how you can transform your life through a meditation and healing system that will manifest your spirit's dreams. She manifested the Women of Wisdom Conference, the Women of Wisdom book, and this radio show. And she can show you how to change your life too. Are you ready? Visit the website and contact her at voicesofwomentoday.com. That's voicesofwomentoday.com.
Curious about the meaning of life? Do you want to deepen your spiritual practice? The School for Esoteric Studies offers online training to spiritual seekers from all paths of life and individual coaching. Our courses synthesize Eastern and Western spiritual traditions based on meditation, study, and service applied to everyday life. The school also organizes group meditations each year to benefit humanity. Whether you're just beginning to reflect on the spiritual side of your life or are a more experienced spiritual seeker, the school warmly welcomes you to join our group. To learn more about our courses and services, please visit esotericstudies.net. That's esotericstudies.net.
Welcome back to Spirit Fire Radio. Dorothy and I have been talking about right action and the moral compass. What is the moral compass? How do we keep our moral compass pointing due north? But Dorothy, before we get going, I'd love to just sort of establish this for people. When do we sense this? I'm trying to remember back in my youth when I was young, when I first experienced a situation that I felt was off, because there's something important that, words don't teach. And you had mentioned that just in the last segment, that we need to experience and we need to see it. We learn by experiencing and feeling it really within our gut. And we can, society has rules. We've got laws, and we are hopefully taught these by our parents, by our schools, but there's something within us that has to sort of go off and say, oh, that's just not right. Now, remember, we had a sort of a bully on our block, and there was a moment when I was young, and I saw him not treating his cat well. And I remember deep down inside just feeling that this was so terribly wrong, and really at the same time questioning, was it my place? He was in his own yard. Do I go up and do I say, no, you shouldn't be doing that? And really wondering what's going on, what's going on? How does this happen that somebody can mistreat, another living thing? And that seemed to just come up for me in a way that I hadn't experienced before. I felt that burning inside of this situation has to end. I wonder for you, where did that come up that that there are dilemmas? We can find ourselves in a moral dilemma.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, the whole issue came up first in terms of what I can remember. Came up first around injustice, or what felt like injustice, and there were two situations very close together in time that gave me that feeling. As a very young person, my family was in China at the time of the revolution, and my parents, foreigners were supposed to leave. My parents didn't want to leave, and then Chinese friends came to our home and said, "If you stay, you put us in danger." And in fact, we learned later that all of the Chinese in our community who had had contact with foreigners were in fact murdered. And so I remember that early feeling of having to leave, and why should I have to leave? And that there was something not right about what was going on, and that people that I cared about could be in danger just from knowing me. And then we went to India. We arrived in India just after the partition. There were, and we were in North India, there were still very strong feelings from that whole part of partition. And I woke up one night. Now, I was about 5 at this point. I woke up one night and I heard two men outside my bedroom window talking. I had been there long enough to have picked up the language, and they were saying, they were talking about killing the Muslims that were in hiding kind of, around where we lived. And then one of the men said, "Well, let's just kill all the Christians while we're at it too." And my family was Christian. And just that feeling of how can people think this way? How can they think that this is okay? So
Wow.
My first introduction was to the complexity of those kinds of decisions, of the political environment that could put people in harm's way, put innocent people in harm's way.
How old were you?
And I was 5.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. And I mean, to remember it clearly from that age, it made quite an impact on me. But it was what I am grateful for is, at least for me, the impact was to introduce me at a very early age to the fact that moral choices were complex.
Yes.
Because I as a young person, I didn't have a lot of skill at it, but I was trying to imagine why these men would say this. Nobody was holding a gun to their head. They weren't themselves in immediate danger. Why were they thinking that they needed to kill people that they didn't know and that had not harmed them in any way?
Yes.
So it taught me not to just kind of coast through life, that everything's fine, don't worry about it. It introduced me to that moral complexity at a very early age.
Well, and even for me, there's quite a difference between being 5 years old and hearing that they might just come right inside and take out your family for being Christian, than seeing my neighbor pick up his cat by the tail. Two very different scenarios. But for me, the complexity was there as well. I really realized that the animal kingdom was to be cherished. I grew up in a family full of hunters and fishers, and I couldn't put a worm on a hook. I refused to sort of catch, when you're a kid, you smear the lightning bugs. And there was a reverence I had for the animal kingdom after seeing this helpless animal and realizing I'm not going to hunt and I'm not going to fish because I can choose otherwise. And luckily I had family that would support that, and was a vegetarian for many years, and really came to sort of really have reverence for harmlessness toward animals, and that we have to steward the animal kingdom, and they are there for us as we are there for them. So equally complex in a way, in that I saw this animal and thought that this person has got a choice, and that choice, should be different if we've all got choice and we can make that choice. So yes, complexity always surrounds morals, right? We have to dissect it and look at it and see where it fits in our own, in our own life and in our own standards.
Well, and another aspect of complexity, Steve, that I struggle with is if we take seriously the fact that we are all interconnected, we are all part of the one life, then we are related to all of those people that we might think are horrible or are making terrible decisions. And, I hasten to add, I really think it's important to distinguish between a person's action and who they are. I don't know who they are, but I can look at their actions. But I can say that's not a choice that I would make. I can say that's not a choice that I approve of. But I cannot say that is someone that I have no relationship with.
Right.
And that's hard when people are, like, if I think about those two men outside my bedroom window, talking about killing all these people, I am related to them. I was related to them. I didn't think about it as a 5-year-old self, but I can't just say, oh, well, they're off over there in some other, they're not even human, or, they're, you know what I mean? Just try to say,
yes,
they're bad and I'm good. I can't do that.
Yes. And one would say that your response to them, your reaction, even the thought forms that you create around them are important, and they are in front of you, and you are witnessing that situation for a reason. And that what you might contribute to that situation, it's not to say in being connected with them also is some sort of responsibility for your actions. How will you react? And what will you bring to this situation, even if it's only within your own internal response and understanding of the situation.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is, we've talked before about the relationship between energy and thought, and the fact that we do form reality through our focus and where we put our energy. I just want to add a footnote, because it comes up for me anyway in conversations with people, that in a situation like that where, if I was in that situation as an adult and I was listening to that conversation, the thing that I need to not do, which I have done in my younger life, is to send them energy, surround them with love. What I'm doing when I do that is I'm providing them with more energy to do what they are choosing to do. But I can visualize, from a shielding perspective, surrounding them with an energetic barrier that blocks those negative actions from having as much impact as they might otherwise. So I do have a responsibility to take an action, but the action is not to not to provide fuel for the fire, so to speak, but to try to contain what's happening.
Right. So many people, I know when the elections were going on, not to bring it straight back to politics, but so many people just saying, I'm going to send love. I'm going to send love. And it's a valid and very good point to make, that if we send energy somebody's way and we are not very clear about the outcome and what our intention is, and that we're acting to see a different outcome, right, we can be feeding that fire. So yeah, good point. So it's so easy to lose our moral compass. You hear somebody outside your window talking like that, or we see this environment where it's really so many people setting an example of, it's all about me, I'm just going to look out for me, that it's so easy to sort of fall for that. It seems that all of the energy is moving in that direction. And so it seems we're tempted, or can sometimes be a wave that we could lose our moral compass. So I'd love to talk about that. We're going to go to a break, and when we get back, how and why do we lose our moral compass and getting it back? More on that when we come back.
Thrive is what we experience when our mind, body, and soul operate as one. When we thrive, we excel on all levels. Thrive is the mindset that matters. It is essential to our being. Have you ever found yourself looking for the instruction manual on how to thrive? You'll find everything you need to help you feel strong, powerful, and peaceful in your own body. So don't waste any more time. Visit thrivebyjen.com today.
Hi, I'm Steve Kramer of Spirit Fire Radio, and I believe that meditation changes everything. It leads us in the direction of greater well-being, and that's a fact. I struggled with meditation for years. I understood the principles, but I found it hard to incorporate them into my everyday life. Spirit Fire's meditation practice changed that. It's called the Practice of Living Awareness, and it's taught in 14 steps. These are 14 tools that I can use in any moment, on and off the cushion. Steps like smile, flow, and ground of being support my clarity of mind while I'm navigating the ups and downs of modern life. That's why it's called the Practice of Living Awareness. If you'd like to add meditation to your daily experience, the Practice of Living Awareness is free, online, and it's suited for any level of practitioner. Visit spiritfire.com for more information. And be sure to check out Spirit Fire's meditation retreats in Western Massachusetts. It's all there at spiritfire.com.
Get ready to experience Truth Talk Radio with host Deb Acker. Tune in to Truth Talk Radio each Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific on TransformationTalkRadio.com to illuminate the truth in your daily life as you experience life, love, and abundance from a whole new perspective. This hit show will leave you feeling lighter and bring you into a place of infinite possibilities every day in every way. Visit TruthTalkRadioshow.com for upcoming transformative topics and guests. Tune in to the hit show Mouthing Off with Chef Rossi. Chef Rossi mouths off about different subjects in pursuit of breaking down walls and opening up your minds. She and Dr. Pat banter back and forth, taking from the headlines of the day on subjects that reach beyond what goes on in the world into your hearts. And go to theragingskillet.com to find out more and let Chef Rossi know what's on your mind.
Welcome back to Spirit Fire Radio. I'm joined with Dr. Dorothy Riddle. And before we start, I'd love to tell listeners a little bit about our organizations. We are cooperating. We are together, two organizations bringing you Spirit Fire Radio, the School for Esoteric Studies and Spirit Fire. Dorothy, you want to tell listeners a little bit about School for Esoteric Studies?
Yes, thank you, Steve. The School for Esoteric Studies provides discipleship training for those interested in deepening their spiritual practice and maximizing their ability to be world servers. And in terms of our topic for today, one of the linchpins, if you will, of the school's approach is that our soul is really our teacher. The school provides coaching, if you will, in that process of really understanding who we are and how we live a life of service that supports the common good. So this is very much related to, learning and listening to a set of internal values that lead us in that direction. And we are consciously wanting to work with other spiritual groups, and we are absolutely delighted to have this collaboration with Spirit Fire.
Beautiful. And listeners can find you at School for Esoteric Studies.
Studies.
Oh, I'm sorry, Esoteric Studies. You do it.
Esotericstudies.net.
Yes, esotericstudies.net.
Mm-hmm.
Esotericstudies.net, which is a wonderful website full of so much incredible information. And Spirit Fire, you can find us at spiritfire.com. We are an organization, we've got a retreat center in Western Massachusetts, and we are intent upon bringing awareness and consciousness to the forefront of your life in practical ways through meditation and purposeful living. We've got our own meditation practice called the Practice of Living Awareness, which you can find more about online. So that is Right Action, the two of us dedicating very much of our lives to these educational nonprofit organizations. Both of us, I know, hold that dear to our heart, goodwill and right action in the form of our daily tasking, right? So moral compass. And how do we lose this? We see examples so often, and it can wear one down. I know personally, without going into details, goodness gracious, what's going on with healthcare. And my partner and I have just recently really hit a wall, as so many Americans have, and realized that this system can just wear you down. And watching the news regularly to see what's going on with Obamacare, that there are just times that you feel you just want to throw in the towel, and it gets tough. And we've got to find our center, find our truth again. When we see so many people who perhaps are failing to live up to what we know as the truth, what we know as good, what we know as action that will bring us together, we can sometimes just lose it. And so how do we get it back,
Well, to kick off this section, I would like to contribute a quote, which we often start the program with a quote. We didn't today, but there's one from Mahatma Gandhi that I think is very relevant. He said, "To believe in something and not to live it is dishonest." And I think, actually, from my own personal experience, to live in a way that is not congruous, that is not bringing together what it is that you believe and how you're living, is actually more exhausting than to live what you believe, to be very clear about that. And Steve, I'd like to use some of the experiences from what happened after the Second World War to cast a light on this, if you don't mind. After the Second World War, there were a series of trials called the Nuremberg trials, and these were trials for war crimes. And oftentimes the people who were on trial believed that they had behaved appropriately because they were following orders and they were doing what they were told. And in order to have these trials, the nations involved had to decide together for the first time on a set of principles. In other words, what was moral and what was immoral. And so they developed 7 principles called the Nuremberg principles, which if you're our listeners are not familiar with them, you can Google and get the whole set. But there are two of them that are particularly relevant, I think, to our discussion today. The fourth principle says, in essence, just following orders is not an acceptable excuse. In other words, if somebody tells you to do something that's wrong and you do it, that doesn't excuse you from the consequences of those actions. Now, they put a caveat there that, if you are in danger of your life, if somebody's holding a gun to your head, then that may be an excuse. But not following orders is not an acceptable excuse. And then principle 7, which says complicity in a crime is itself a crime. So what's interesting to me about these, Steve, is that it really brings it back home to each of us. In other words, we are moral actors, and we are responsible for our behavior. We can't put it off and say, well, it was somebody else did it. Somebody else was the leader. No, we are responsible.
Right. I mean, we are individual souls. We have got our own mind. We talk so much about the nature of group and the one life that we can see that lines could be blurred where people fall into group think, and they feel, well, okay, I'm a part of this group and I'm acting with the group. But there comes a time where you've got to say to yourself, if the group is acting in a way that is, well, either illegal or immoral or is clearly not right, that I've got to separate myself or stand up for what is right. Certainly, yeah. I mean, Hitler, that situation, there's an amazing documentary from 1975 that's on HBO right now. I was just watching it a couple of weeks ago, of the Nuremberg trials. And some of those people, even in this documentary in the 70s, were still so firm in that they were impeccably following their orders, that they not only should not have been on trial, but they should be celebrated. Even, that during war, these were orders. I was a naval officer and I was leading the Navy impeccably. But, if you've got knowledge that there are war crimes happening, then you've got to step out. Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing that today, which is, I think, which is why people are so sort of upset. You see when you've got a Congress that has got one approach, and that approach, is there's a group think going on, and it's almost snowballing to the point where the country is not being served, and is my party being served, or is my duty to serve the well-being of Americans? Is my duty to serve the well-being of the greater good? I think that's certainly what we're seeing today.
Mm-hmm. And I think we've commented on it on another show, but I think it's relevant to our discussion today, Steve, that one of the things that I find heartening is the level of civic engagement of people going to town halls and saying, do your job to their representatives. We elected you. You are supposed to be independent of the executive branch. You're supposed to be thinking clearly about what is best for the common good, for Americans as a whole. Do your job.
Right. And the only reason that I can really come to that they are really not doing their job, beyond greed, beyond all of it, is fear. It is fear. Our president seems to have set up a scenario, and we even saw that was part of what was just so sort of atrocious this week, of him saying, well, you are loyal to me, you play by my rules, or you're out. And so I think a lot of these people are torn between who do I serve? Do I serve the president, or do I serve my constituents, or do I serve the American public? And it seems that, fear is the ultimate. That's what we need to combat more than anything.
Well, yeah, and I agree with you that we see that dynamic, but it's interesting to me that on a certain level, what is there to be afraid of? If you lose yourself, which is what when we talk about losing our moral compass, if we start acting in ways that are not in alignment with basic values, then we really lose ourselves.
Yeah.
And if you lose yourself, what's left? So, I mean, I myself, I'm sure you and many of our listeners have been in situations where, I've been in situations where I've lost a job. I've had other dire consequences, or what would appear to others to be dire consequences, as a result of standing up and saying, no, that's not right.
Yes.
No, I won't go along with that. But on the other hand, there's a certain sense in which I couldn't do anything else because I wouldn't be me.
Right. Yeah.
And so there's I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying there aren't sometimes terrible and very painful consequences, sometimes economic consequences that can seem catastrophic. But in the end of the day, if you don't have your own integrity, what do you have?
Yes, and it seems that that's what these town halls are face-to-face, as you said earlier. This idea of looking each other, talking, communicating, it's offering that to these politicians and saying, find your core, find your integrity, listen and go get beyond get beyond the fear and the greed and do your job, as you say, do your job. So we're going to take a break and come back and talk about then how do we all strengthen our moral compass if we find that we have fallen astray or there's a fog, we can't sort of see our way. How do we strengthen it so we can be guided by our own integrity? More on that when we get back.
Gifted intuitive healer and spiritual teacher Sarah Luce brings her unique style to the hit show Small Steps, Big Breakthrough Radio on TransformationTalkRadio.com. Tune in each month as Sarah turns reality on end and shows us how to experience expansive results with simple yet powerful steps. Expect an enlightening bend on what you currently believe is possible. For show details and upcoming topics, visit sarahluce.com. That's SARALOOS.com.
Awareness is universal. Establishing a living awareness through meditation brings peaceful, healthy, and creative well-being into your everyday life. The practice of living awareness, Spirit Fire's own meditation practice, is built on this belief and is designed for every level of practitioner. Each year, Spirit Fire hosts living awareness meditation retreats that allow you to explore the practice in depth at our retreat center in beautiful Western Massachusetts. Introduce yourself to meditation and the practice at the Foundation's retreat. Attend, in silence, a silent meditation retreat focused on mindfulness, presence, and nature, or be engaged with the meditation sittings themselves at the Deepening Retreat. Start adding to your awareness and attend a meditation retreat designed to cultivate consciousness in your everyday life. For details on attending a Living Awareness meditation retreat, visit upcoming events at www.spiritfire.com.
Are you feeling stagnant or blocked in your love life, career, health, or finances? Experiencing difficulty focusing or setting and achieving goals? Tune in to Spiritual Diagnostics Radio with psychic visionary healers Carol Dorian and Justice Welling. Discover the cause and effect of unwanted patterns in life. Tune in every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio. For more information, visit spiritualdeed.com.
Be you plus live your purpose equals joy. That's the motto of Unstuck Joy with Vicki Todd. Vicki believes you were born with gifts that are meant to make the world brighter. Each show will feature an art visioning journal prompt to help you create your way to soul clarity. If you're ready to get unstuck and create more joy, this show is for you. Tune in every month on Transformation Talk Radio. For more information, visit VickiWorldArt.com.
Hello, welcome back to Spirit Fire Radio. And we're talking about right action, and having a moral compass is quite helpful when we are trying to determine right action, what is good for us all, what is good for the greater good, and how can we improve tomorrow, make it a little bit better than today. Leadership, Dorothy, I would say leadership is so essential. We're talking quite a bit about what it takes to be a good leader. And I find that when we lead by example, we then create a better world. We have to look to leaders. We have to find leaders who've got, a sense of moral. We've got to be leaders ourselves and find those that set the example for those around us, huh?
Absolutely. And that reminds me of that saying, watch what I do, not what I say.
Yes.
And that's so very, very true. I think while we were on break, I was just thinking about the fact that it's almost like talking about ethical situations has gone out of fashion, and I think we need to bring it back into fashion, because it's that rehearsal, it's that thinking about and talking to other people about what would you do in this situation, what are all the ramifications, what are all the possibilities, dealing with that complexity, but rehearsing ahead of time so that when we're in the immediate situation, we can stay grounded in our core beliefs and values, which is so important.
Well, and sussing that out with another person also helps us really appreciate different points of view. That it's not only our point of view, but being able to talk that through with somebody, these complex situations, and getting to the core, getting to know another human being. And sometimes there are more than one way. Sometimes it teaches us respect for different opinions, but also in those kind of quandaries in talking them through with someone and really getting in the complexity of it, we can learn. We might actually learn a thing or two. I know I have in these sort of situations, and we stay flexible. I think that's a big part of writing our moral compasses is being flexible. Consciousness expands, time moves on, and sort of moral codes change as we grow, and we need to be adaptable. That is certainly one of the principles that we've talked about that governs our reality is being adaptable and being cooperative. So I think staying flexible. I think of Pope Francis. I think of the way that he has sort of revolutionized moral code, and it's because he's been all heart. He's been willing to talk to people. He's been willing to get together in group and to really look at a situation with a sense of compassion, a sense of humanity, and be flexible. I think that's a huge part of it.
And I just want to underscore one of the pieces also that you were saying, which is seeking out feedback, seeking out the dialogue, as opposed to isolating ourselves and feeling that we are somehow, we're correct the way we are, that we don't ever need to think about new nuances in terms of how we all live together.
And I think, Dorothy, just to say, I think if we do that, we tend to then toward criticism. We'll say, well, I just don't agree with you. That's not right. And we'll go our own way, as opposed to working together and coming to a common solution. and together deciding what's right. You talked about joy replacing criticism. If you don't agree with somebody's actions, it could be easy to say, well, I'll never be like them. But what if you approach them and say, hey, could we talk about what you just did? That's how we evolve, and that's how we grow. And that is where joy and a sense of reverence for connection and for growth comes in.
Absolutely. I'm thinking of a very simple language exercise that has been very helpful to me. And it relates, of course, to the whole thing of not thinking dualistically, but to think in terms of both and. So I feel this way, you feel that way. So where is the common ground? Where is the synergy between how we're seeing things? And oftentimes you can. I'm just going to share a really quick example.
We've got a minute left.
Well, then I'm not going to save this for another time.
Yes, well, we're going to go on to talk about, because I just thought of a moral quandary as well that I was in. And I thought I would love to talk about it on the show. We've got 2 more shows about right action, so that will be great.
Yeah,
Dorothy, any just final words in the last minute?
Yes. So the final word that I want to give is one of the most dangerous positions that we can put ourselves in is to only take and not give back. The universe of which we're a part is an energy field. It is dynamic, and the energy has to flow. When it gets dammed up, you think about physical constipation, you can actually die from it. So we need to feel ourselves in the flow of taking in and giving back.
Co-creation. Yes, we create a more perfect world. So right action means cooperation, collaboration, and getting in the nitty-gritty and making a difference together. Very good, Dorothy. Well, next week we are going to continue talking about right action in ways that you can cultivate it, bring more right action into your life, and see a better world actually manifest right before your eyes. So, Dorothy, I look forward to that, and I'll be talking to you next week. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
It's been great, Steve.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Spirit Fire Radio. Tune in each Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon Eastern for your weekly guide to purposeful living and practical spirituality. Join hosts Steve Kramer and Dorothy Riddle as they shine the light on universal spiritual principles and uncover ways that ageless wisdom can guide you in cultivating consciousness in your everyday life. Add to your awareness with Spirit Fire Radio. To learn more, visit spiritfireradio.com.